Welcome, Aida Waserstein. You have once again reinvented yourself, and it's my great pleasure to be speaking with you today. Now, do you want me to laundry list everything in your life, or do you want to explain being an immigrant child, a child in foster care, separated from parents, graduated from college, university, law school, practiced law, sat on the bench in family court, and now you're a children's author? Wow.
Uh, I think you explained it. What I can tell you, though, is that those life experiences shaped me as a judge and also led me to what I'm doing now.
I cannot imagine having a better person to adjudicate family matters all these years than someone who had really experienced the system. You carried with you the feeling of loss, the need for justice. How did that inspire you when it came to writing My Name is Aida? It's so charming.
Well, for a long time, people kept telling me that I should write a book. So I started writing a book for adults, and then I put it down, and then I had a grandchild. And I decided I would do a children's book so that my grandchildren would know what their family history was. And when I retired from the bench, I thought, what was it that I liked? And one of the things that I liked was writing. So this was a way of being able to write in a different way. So basically, I had to teach myself how to write differently than what I had done on the bench.
You know, I love writing, and the one thing I've learned is that it works when you can find a voice, and you certainly have found a voice. I'm not just saying this, I get goosebumps when I read My Name is Aida. You have found that young child's voice, and you do it so beautifully. Can you explain the plot to our viewers?
Well, what happened was that when I came to the United States, and there were like over 14,000 children who came from Cuba the way I did. We basically got on a plane by ourselves and either wound up in foster home. A lot of the Catholic children, because there were so many of them, wind up in group situations, like a large, what they call Cap Matacumbe was the boys group.
And may I say, Aida, here in Delaware, they were in a facility called Seton Villa, and they were in my 6th or 7th grade class. One day, none, the next day, a whole group of children from Cuba. It was quite startling.
And some of them have gone on. I wasn't here in Delaware then, but I have met them as adults. One of them is Joe Miro, who has been in the legislature in the state for many years before retiring and had a career in education. And another one was Dr. Pedro Ferreira, who passed away, who was a psychologist and had a couple other advanced degrees. And I'm sure there may be others that I just don't happen to know. Those two people happen to be my friends.
Sure. So you
and
were...
Irene Waldron, too, was one of the Pedro Pans who came to Delaware.
So you were inspired. Here you are, this little girl sent on a plane to a strange country. You didn't speak the language. And now you've interpreted that for children who might be feeling out of sorts or like they don't fit in. Can you explain?
Yes. What happened was, because I didn't speak English, I couldn't do anything in school. I mean, and school was really important to me. That's one thing I brought with me from Cuba. But I couldn't understand. Like, I remember my first social studies test, they asked me to write down the 13 colonies, and I dutifully did it. And then I looked at it again, and I thought, oh, no, that's not what the question is asking. So I erased it, and I started writing what I thought the question was. And then the teacher wrote, you would have done fine, this material if you had followed the directions. But I couldn't understand the directions. And there were other examples like that. I came in June I was around July or August that summer. I remember being at the pool, neighborhood pool, and kids were trying to teach me how to dive, and I was on the side of the swimming pool, and they kept saying, push, push with your feet, but I didn't know what push meant. So it kind of gathered more kids, and at one point there were like 10 of them saying, push, push, but it meant nothing to me. I had no idea what they were talking about.
Wow.
So once I learned English, and I thought I was different from everybody else. I mean, I just looked at everybody else and I thought, I don't belong here, I don't fit. And then once I learned English and I started making friends, I realized that everybody was different. It's very much the Quaker belief that there is a spirit of God in every person. Although at that point I didn't understand it that way because I was 13 years old. And that's also a Jewish belief. And I think and there are other religions in which it's probably also a very central belief. So once I realized that I was different, I began to understand over time, over my teenage years, that being different was a good thing. And it made us all stronger. And there was a lot of other stuff going on. It was also when the civil rights movement was happening. My foster mother marched in Selma. She asked for permission from the social work agency for me to go with her. And they said no, that if I went, they would take me away from the house, from that foster home. And there was also the women's movement. Betty Friedan's book came out when I was in high school. So I felt different at varied levels. It was language. It was being Jewish in a school district that had 4 Jewish kids in the entire district. It was being Hispanic. My brother and I were the only Hispanic kids in the whole school district. There was no Spanish radio stations or Spanish newspapers in the suburbs of Philadelphia.
And we should explain to our viewers that your mother and father fled Eastern Europe to escape the Nazis. They were Jewish. They then married in Cuba. I know you were born in Cuba. Did your mom and dad marry there?
Yes, but my mom fled after the Russian Revolution as a little girl. And she went from Russia. And my father fled in Poland in 1937, 2 years before the Nazis invaded Poland. And if there were between 900 or more, possibly 1,500 Jews in that town who were burned alive in July of 41, including his aunt, and also his young cousin was killed. Another older cousin survived because he was hidden by a family under a barn for the whole war. And so he wasn't escaping the Nazis from the point of view that the Nazis were there or he was in a camp.
No, I should have clarified.
No, I'm just explaining it because, but he did leave 2 years before, and if he hadn't, it's almost certain. And my father had a limp when he was a young boy. He was born in 1900 in a farm in Poland. And when he was a young boy, he had an infection in one leg and he had a limp. So aside from the fact that he was Jewish, the fact that he limped when he walked probably would have meant that he would have been chosen very early on if he had been put in a camp.
You know, Aida, your book is so timely because we are suffering through right now in this country. I think it's a terrible time where Hispanic immigrants primarily are being persecuted in so many ways. We don't have a comprehensive immigration plan. And I bet there are a lot of little boys and girls who will be able to relate to your book. How are you going to get it out there into libraries and into the hands of kids?
Well, I've done some Zoom meetings during the pandemic. Before that, I was doing sessions in public. And one thing that's different between the English version and the bilingual version is, and this is something it took me literally 7 months to figure out how to handle it because I was very concerned about it. But there's a scene in the book where my father and my aunt and uncle finally come from Cuba. And my brother had come 2 months after I did. And we're reunited, and there is a drawing of that. And the book talks about, I was so happy when my family came. And what I changed in that, in the Spanish, just a couple of sentences, but what I said was something along the lines of, I always dreamed that I would be reunited with my Cuban family again. And that gave me hope to keep going, because I was concerned about children today from Central America and possibly other parts of the world who are separated from their parents or in danger of being separated from their parents. And I didn't know how to handle that for that audience in a way that would be meaningful, but wouldn't be as traumatizing as I thought it would be. So I changed that language, just the first couple sentences, to kind of give that hope and that emphasis on trying to do what you can do. Basically, I couldn't control what was going on. I mean, I was here during the nuclear missile crisis, and my
And
family
you had
was.
lost your mother when you were little.
My mother had died literally in November, and the revolution happened in January. So and my mother had been sick my whole life. So I had a lot of trauma that way already, even before 1959, just because of the circumstances of my mother always being ill during my entire life.
You know, great writers write from personal experience, and I know you have several other children's books on the drawing boards, and they all sound like they're based on experience you had as a family court judge. Can you briefly talk about that?
Yeah, the ones that relate to the family court are not any particular case. What I did is I basically invented the characters and the situations.
Composite.
It's a composite of, yes, of the kinds of things that I heard. But one of them is called Amelia Finds Her Voice. It's a 9-year-old girl who was named after Amelia Earhart. And she has a pocketbook that has an owl and berets, matching berets. And the owl is her alter ego. And her parents, she was a happy girl who liked to draw. And then her parents started going through a separation and divorce, and everything changed. And what the story is about is how she grew to be able to assert herself in an appropriate way and tell her parents what things she wanted differently. So the book ends not with a, they lived happily ever after ending, because I didn't think that would be realistic, but she gets to see both parents in the middle of the week when she's with the other parents. The parents and the grandmother come to her things. And basically it's her growth in terms of being able, and it also talks about how the mediator at the court can try to help you, the judge can try to help you, the judge can tell the family what to do. But if you all as a family can work through some kind of alternative dispute resolution, it would be better. And that's basically what happens. They work with a therapist. But the
And,
little girl being able to speak up is really what the book is about.
and it will be bilingual as well?
I don't think so, just because it literally took me a year to get it from English to Spanish. And it's really difficult. And it's particularly difficult because if you're working with someone who is going to do the final stage of the book after it's translated, there are all sorts of little mistakes that happen because of the language difference. And I don't know. At this point, I don't have plans to do that. At this point, I have the hope of publishing it. So,
2 more questions. First of all, can you talk about the illustrations? Did you collaborate, or are you also an artist?
no, I'm not an artist. And the person who did the illustrations is a young man, in my view. I mean, I don't know if he's in his late 30s or what, but to me, he looks young. And he had never done this before, and we had never met before. And we have become friends as a result of it. And he's probably going to start illustrating another book that I wrote called Joey's Buddy, which is about a child in foster care. We're going to start that process actually tomorrow. We're having a Zoom meeting about it. There's also another book that's in the works, which is about a child from Afghanistan, a child from Pakistan, and a child from Africa. And they have a teacher who happens to be a great-granddaughter of survivors of the Holocaust. Mm. And it's about thankfulness, because gratitude is a word on their spelling test, and they're learning English, and it's hard. What kind of foods would they bring to a meal? Well, they all bring their kinds of foods. and they dress in their traditional dress. And all the books have something in common in that they're interactive. The child can try to read it, an adult can read it to the child, and then there are questions at the end to try to draw the child into a discussion and further understanding based on the child's age. So
has the quarantine been helpful while you've been shut indoors? And not helpful, okay.
I did absolutely nothing on any of these books for about 3 months. I think it was true for a lot of people, you know. I was supposed to go to a bilingual immersion school on March 30th, a Monday. And it was all set up, you know, we had notices had gone out to the parents that I was coming about the, you know, what the book was about. And March 30th was the first day that there was no school in Delaware. So I think it took everybody time. I'm hoping to start in the next couple of weeks making calls, particularly in Sussex County, to see about doing more Zoom meetings. But I think it's probably too early because the school districts
right.
I don't know yet what they're doing.
Well, Aida, I could talk to you all day, and I can't wait to speak to you again when the other books are available. But where can folks access this book? Where can they purchase the book?
Right now, they can purchase it at the Hockessin Bookshelf in Newcastle County. They can purchase it at Browse-About Books in Sussex County. They can just get it from Amazon, and it's really easy. Actually, Amazon, my experience about a month ago, or a month and a half, was when I ordered one book, it came like in less than 4 days. So if that's still the experience, it comes very quickly. And all you have to do is go to Amazon Books, put in my name as the author, or put in my name is Aida, or Me llamo Aidita, which is the Spanish version. But if you put in the English one, then you also see the bilingual one. And then everything pops up.
Aida Waserstein, so proud of you, neighbor. Wow, you have reinvented yourself and you are an inspiration. Thanks so much for taking the time today to speak with me. The book is My Name is Aida. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye.